Hi everyone, this is Helena Bajaj Larsen here. I'm a textile designer and I specialize in hand painted textiles. So to tell you a little bit about my background, well, first of all, I'd like to thank Helsinki Fashion Week for having me. I'm very excited to talk a bit more about my work and my journey today. So it all began with, I have to sort of go back into my childhood, obviously. And so my mom is a prominent Indian painter. So I have been surrounded by art and design since I was a kid. And I think whilst most kids were actually off at camp or doing outdoor activities, in my household, it was very much always about like literally tagging along with my mom to gallery openings. And the things that she would sign me up for were always arts and crafts related. Every present that we had to gift any relative always had to be handmade. So, most kids would get like 10 euros to go buy a gift. And I was like, no, I have to make something from scratch. So making has been very much sort of rooted in everything that I've done from a very, very young age. And so I think growing up with art, I always had a fascination for this universe. And even the people that I encountered through my mom's network, I found creative people to be very invigorating and fascinating in a way that I hadn't seen other people be. So I was very attracted to this world. And but I knew I didn't want to do exactly what I had obviously seen my mom do, which was paint and art in a more fine arts context. And so when I was 12 or 13, I discovered that there's this whole thing called design, and that the design industry has the unique quality of combining art and function. And so that's when I kind of knew that that's definitely something that really fits what I was looking for, which was creative, but in a functional sense. And it seemed like it was a business that had a lot more to it. And whereas fine arts felt very much like artists, kind of individuals working in their studios. And obviously, you interact with a lot of people. But another thing I liked about design was it just felt like a more structured industry. So then I started doing some internships in design, mostly in fashion. My first internship when I was 14 was at Nina Ricci, actually in Paris. It was a tiny, tiny internship, but I remember one of the things that I really loved was that you walk into the design office and actually, nobody spoke French, and it was such an international environment. And even for me, I was in a very Frenchy French high school. Sorry, I'm just going to turn this noise off. Yes. And so to see that in design, there was such a space for people from completely different walks of life, speaking completely different languages, and that differences were celebrated. I think that's another instance in which I realized that this is an industry I'm very drawn to, because the more unique you are, the more different you are, the more you're actually celebrated. Um, I obviously always felt very different because I grew up in Paris, but I'm half Indian, half Norwegian. So my mom is Indian, my dad's Norwegian. They met in France, and I grew up here. So complete cultural identity crisis, one might say. But at the same time, it was a richness. So then as I realized this in high school, I started applying to design schools, and I ended up attending Parsons School of Design in New York City, where I pursued a bachelor in fashion design, specializing in materiality and minoring in jewelry design for 4 years. I graduated in 2017. And so basically today what I do stems a lot from my studies, very, very much so. I think a lot of the times you have people who say, I studied something and now I'm doing something totally different. I think in my case, it's very, very linear actually. So my thesis I developed for my senior year, like the graduate collection, as most art and design schools have, was all centered around the fabric khadi. So I don't know if maybe some of you are familiar with it, but it was a fabric that was at the core of the Indian independence movement led by Mahatma Gandhi. And my family, my Indian side of the family, they were all social workers, with very, very close ties to Mahatma Gandhi, working alongside him basically for the independence struggle. And the beauty of the khadi fabric, why was it such a key component of this battle, was that it was the fabric that, first of all, Mahatma Gandhi was teaching all villagers across India how to spin it. And so it revived cottage industries. It allowed them to boycott all the fabric that was coming in from the UK. So obviously that was a big stance against British rule in India. And it just became a whole symbol of the movement. Anyone that was in the movement would wear a khadi, and it's this white linen-y fabric basically. So I really researched that in depth because I felt like it was a good topic in the sense that it regrouped my family history, also my passion for textiles, since it was all about a fabric. And it also really allowed me to explore it for my thesis, applying all the skills I had learned in school. So the way that I approached khadi was very different. I thought, how can we take this fabric that's very simple? It's entirely white, and that's what it stands for, actually, that it was uniform and it was white and it included everyone, in the sense that it was such a simplistic attire. And so I thought, okay, let's completely change what it looks like, and the connotations that are attached to it. And I remembered that I had done a couple textile painting workshops when I was a kid. Again, one of the many things my mom used to sign me up for while other people were like playing football outside. And so when I was 8 is when I had first painted fabric. And I thought it was fun. I did it once, did it again when I was 15, maybe. And then I thought, okay, let's revisit this for thesis, because I didn't see anyone around me at Parsons doing the same thing. So I thought, okay, well, this is a cool technique, and it might actually help my collection stand out, since I'm not seeing it around. And that's what I did. So then I gathered khadi silks from. I went to India for a month, I think, and I visited old mills, and I spoke to people who were very much in khadi production today and trying to keep it alive, and so on and so forth. And I gathered all this information. I did a series of photographs of all these places, these abandoned mills, abandoned factories, and then also currently functioning workshops and such. And so basically built this whole, thesis, story, book, photo series around this. And then I had to develop, obviously, a collection, because we're still in fashion school here. And so I gathered all these silks from these small, producers and mills and workshops. And then I went back to the textile painting workshop where I had been previously as a kid, and I painted all of these basically by hand, and keeping in mind the color story of the spaces I had visited. And that's how you kind of came in with all the rusts and the reds and the ochres and the metallics, because it was all about the dry vegetation in those areas, and also the color of the walls and of these factories, and et cetera, et cetera. So that's how the collection was developed. And that's how I went back to the painting idea, because I wanted to take this very white fabric and completely alter it. And I did. And it didn't look like khadi at all, in its sort of traditional sense. And yeah, so to give you an idea, because I'm talking a lot and I'm not showing anything, the way that I worked for my thesis, and then again, just the thesis then led to me applying to a lot of competitions with the graduate collection, and that got some attention. And so gradually it kind of just turned into a business very organically. I did not know that I was going to be painting fabric for such a long time, and maybe for the rest of my life, who knows? But that's kind of just what happened. So for example, this would be a white silk, and they're entirely hand painted. So every single color that you see, every shade is completely hand done. And then, they can be turned into garments, basically. And so the unique aspect as well of these garments is that because it's all hand painted and nothing is digitally printed or screen printed, it means every single garment is a one-off piece. It's almost like, I guess, prêt meets couture in that sense, that there's no two pieces. So even if a wholesaler wants to say, hey, I want style number 57 times 200, that's something I simply can't provide. So it is more of an art textile studio than a fashion label in every way, actually, in every sense possible. And so that's one of the things I'm interested in kind of seeing, is actually how can it apply itself to worlds that are not fashion. Just showing you a couple more pieces. So this is like a cape kind of thing. This is a thin raw silk. I mainly work with silk because the dyes register very, very well, and the colors really pop. But yeah, I'm basically working right now. My next collaboration is actually a furniture collaboration with a dear friend of mine who just started a company called Pendapa Atelier, and they're developing all of their furniture in Indonesia. So we're working on something quite cool, combining their design and then my fabric. So I'm curious to see how that goes, and then we're working on exhibiting that in furniture galleries and such. So that'll be a next step for me. And yeah, otherwise, I mean, I guess why textiles? If I had to ask myself that, it would be what I really think is unique about making your own fabric. It is really building the skin of a garment cell by cell, because Like I said, I mean, it starts off completely white, and then I apply different textures I mean, I create different textures through using a variety of different tools on these fabrics, whether it's through spraying, sponging, painting knives, um, spades. There's all kinds of tools that are used. If you check out my Instagram, you might be able to see a little bit more. It's at Helena.Bajaj.Larsen, Larsen. So my full name, but with dots in between. And so you can see me, the process and everything. So it's really interesting. You just had this white fabric, and then you completely create something unexpected out of it, and it looks totally different to when you found it. And so that's really unique because, and then you cut it and it becomes a garment, and it has another life of its own on a person while they wear it. And my clients also really love the fact that their piece nobody else has, because the line that is here on the next jacket will not be here because it's hand done, and because you just so there's a certain haphazardness of like the pleasant accidental surprises also in the process. There's so many things that I don't expect when I'm working that turn out a certain way. Like, this was not supposed to be this color. It was supposed to be red, but then it turned out peach because it mixed with the yellow. So there's also this very fun aspect of the work that I do where there's this discovery every single time that I work. Sometimes bad surprises, but most of the time I would say it's pretty pleasant. Yeah, let me see if there's any questions. Well, there's no questions for now, so I guess I'll keep talking. Yeah, so I think textiles really allows you to combine, it requires a compositional sense, because you're not taking something that's existing and then cutting it into a garment, which is a composition of its own. But so making your own fabric and then making a garment out of it, it's almost like a double exercise in composition, right? Because first, when you're making the fabric, I have to decide, what color is looking good over this color? What's going to happen if I add water, if it blends out? What is this black line going to do? But I'll be honest, when I'm working on the fabric, I'm not really thinking of what it's going to become. I really treat it as a canvas, a flat surface. I'm not thinking, oh, I'm going to make this red dot. This is going to land up on the sleeve if it's cut this way in the pattern cutting process. It's really not in my mind. And so, that's one composition, which is the surface of it. And then the second composition is obviously after the piece is made, how do we cut this to best highlight certain features of the textile? And so in that process, obviously, I try to be as involved as I can, whenever I'm actually in the same city as my factories, but sometimes I'm just not present. And then obviously the factories I work with have to kind of guesstimate what would look good, and also what reduces wastage of fabric and so on. In terms of sustainability, I spoke a bit about this, no, not a bit, a lot about this yesterday when we had the talk with Tamsin Lejeune from Common Objective. And so just to go over it again, because maybe some of you guys didn't tune into that chat, some of the things that we do in terms of sustainability is, we focused more on the social aspect of sustainability for our brand. Because I think when people talk about sustainability, there's very much two important pillars, right? The environmental and the social ethical. So we have focused more on the social ethical in terms of the people that we work with and the product that comes out of it. So we are partnered with Master G India, which is a supplier, a small supplier in Delhi that work with small independent designers. It's a fellow Parsons graduate. It's a great initiative. And again, they trained up to 500 women in the last 5 years or so, and then started a small unit. And it's a great initiative all around. I really recommend that you look into it. And so we work with them. We were working with commercial silks before, but then found out that there are organizations in India that actually are trying to keep these cottage industries alive. So back in line with my senior thesis, actually. And so it's small producers of silk. It's villages that are entirely basically taught how to make these fabrics. And so, it's a very interesting initiative because it allows for work and skill share in places where otherwise there would be very little of it. So we've shifted our we've shifted our suppliers from commercial to sort of small village ones. in the last year in terms of the silk. And then again, Master G, for example, I have only been working with for I think a year and a half. Before that, I had the experience with the big factory guys in India. Really don't recommend it. Really didn't enjoy it. So I think there is an aspect also you realize is initially you go for things that will, save you cost, and my production could probably cost me a lot less. But then when you work with better people and you're just doing something better together, it feels better also. And yeah, perhaps the cost is a bit higher, but at the end of the day, I feel very happy and confident that my clientele is such that they do value the production process of the work. And I think they really enjoy it actually when they hear the story behind their pieces, which at the end of the day today is really important because people really care about the story in a way that they did not before, because there's access to so much information. And even if you think about the way that brands are marketing themselves, and even the way people are sharing information on Instagram, people really want to know what's behind the scenes, because they can see the picture of the product anywhere. You can walk into a store, but they want to know how it's made, why it's made. They want to know what the designer is doing, where they're going. So it's really about creating a community now more than it was before. People are not buying a product; they're buying into a set of values, and mindsets. So I realized it was important for me to actually partner with people that I'm proud to be working with. And I can go to the factory and I see it's a nice environment. I mean, I've worked with some people where I was like, okay, crap, I really can't bring anyone here. And then I realized, that's probably not the best. So it's a learning process. I don't think anyone knows from the start how to be fully sustainable and how to do the right thing all the time. And I think everyone's very quick to attack designers for not always being perfect in this respect. But I think we're trying. Obviously, more people should try, but I think it's a slow process. But everyone's learning. And just like I discovered yesterday, this initiative by Tamsin Lejeune with Common Objective, where they actually pair designers with ethical suppliers. And I guess it's like a Tinder for designers and suppliers, where it's like you're trying to find the one and they help you find it. But so there's more and more of that out there. So I really recommend for other young designers who are struggling with suppliers, because it is a real struggle to try to find resources like this. Had I found a resource like this 2 years ago, I would have avoided working with a lot of people. But we learn. And so yeah, today I'm very, very happy with the setup that we have. Again, we produce very little. It's all very small quantities because everything is done by hand. In terms of scalability, this is something that is we're trying to figure out because it's complicated. But I'm not really willing to compromise the heart and soul of the brand and go digital. I've had lots of offers for it, but it's just not sitting well with me. So we'll see about that. And I'm very curious to see the different kinds of projects that end up hopefully coming my way in the next few years. It's obviously been a few slow months, so it was very exciting to participate with Helsinki Fashion Week. It was very interesting to be approached for an entirely digital showcase, especially when what I do is so hand focused. But it was a really very interesting experience to work with 3D designers and sort of get insight into this digital world and software world. So I mean, I wouldn't, in a way, difficult circumstances make you learn things in a different way. So if this hadn't happened, I probably would have never learned about digital fashion and garment making in softwares, and how to combine craftsmanship with digital. And so I think what we created was actually truly a form of digital craftsmanship. But yeah, I think that is my time now, actually. So thank you so much for listening in, and I hope that it was interesting and that you learned something. And if you want to check out my work, like I said, Helena Bajaj Larsen on Instagram. And yeah, thank you for having me. Bye.